Ladies and gentlemen, the human psyche at its core longs for order amidst the chaos of existence. Without a framework, the mind is prone to drifting, lost in abstract thoughts, emotional confusion, and unfulfilled intentions. A 6-month success plan offers more than just a timeline or goal sheet. It serves as a vessel that gives shape to the formless. In psychological terms, when you bring structure to your life, you initiate the process of individuation, the alignment of the conscious and unconscious aspects of yourself. Structure doesn't mean rigidity, rather it is a flexible but grounded path that acts as a bridge between your current self and your potential self. The very act of outlining a clear plan creates a psychological container in which growth can occur. Most people misunderstand freedom as the absence of boundaries, but freedom without direction leads not to fulfillment but to fragmentation. If you wake up each day without a sense of direction, your energy dissipates across distractions, social conditioning, and unconscious fears. On the other hand, when you define a path, even as short as 6 months, you are consciously directing your energy. You are choosing intention over impulse, vision over randomness. This shift from unconscious to conscious living is the very essence of psychological development. In this way, structure is not a limitation of your spirit, it is the foundation that supports its expansion. Moreover, when you commit to a structured plan, you activate deeper layers of responsibility and self-awareness. A plan becomes a psychological contract between your current identity and the identity you are striving to become. This contract is not just external, it works internally, nudging you to become more aligned with your values, priorities, and purpose. Each part of the plan acts as a symbol, a point of focus for the mind and soul. You begin to associate your routines, tasks, and milestones with personal meaning, and meaning is what sustains motivation when results are delayed or invisible. It transforms a checklist into a ritual, a task into a transformative act. A structured 6-month journey also allows for reflective awareness. With structure, you can measure not only your progress but your pattern. Are you avoiding certain parts of the plan? Are you excelling in others? These become indicators not just of success or failure, but of deeper psychological truth. Your fears, your drives, your hidden strengths. In essence, the plan becomes a diagnostic tool, revealing the architecture of your inner world. It teaches you about your capacity for discipline, your response to adversity, your adaptability in the face of obstacles. And these are insights no external reward can provide. They are revelations of your true self. Lastly, structure is the necessary precursor to transformation because it anchors the mind in the present while keeping the vision of the future alive. It creates continuity between who you are, who you were, and who you are becoming. In a world filled with noise, distraction, and constant change, having a clearly defined path is an act of rebellion. It is a declaration that your life has meaning, direction, and worth. It's not about following a perfect system, but about committing to an intentional evolution. 6 months may seem brief in the span of a lifetime, but when lived with deliberate structure, it has the power to alter the course of everything that follows. When one sets out on a path of transformation, especially through something as concrete as a 6-month success plan, it is almost inevitable that resistance will arise. This resistance is not merely external, such as distractions or lack of support, but deeply internal. Within every person exists an opposing force, a psychological barrier that rises the moment change is initiated. This resistance often appears as procrastination, self-doubt, fear of failure, or even fear of success. These are not random occurrences but manifestations of the inner conflict between who you are now and who you are striving to become. Transformation threatens the comfort of the familiar, even when that familiarity includes dissatisfaction or stagnation. The mind clings to what it knows because familiarity feels safe, even if it is not beneficial. When you begin a 6-month plan, you are not only organizing your outer life but disturbing the unconscious equilibrium within. The psyche reacts. Parts of you that have remained dormant or repressed come to the surface. Old voices whisper, "You're not good enough, you always give up, or this is pointless." These voices are the remnants of past experiences, unprocessed emotions, and limiting beliefs. They do not want you to grow, not out of malice, but because they are trying to protect the self from perceived danger. Growth implies risk, exposure, and vulnerability. To transform, you must confront these inner guardians, not to silence them, but to understand and integrate them. This confrontation is a psychological necessity. Without facing internal resistance, no real change can occur. Resistance reveals where your work lies. Each excuse, delay, or moment of self-sabotage is an invitation to look deeper. What belief lies beneath your inaction? What fear is hiding behind your distraction? The 6-month plan becomes a mirror, not just reflecting your ambitions, but your limitations. It shows you what you're avoiding and why. If you pay attention, the process of executing the plan becomes a form of self-inquiry, a daily dialogue between the conscious will and the unconscious resistance. This inner conflict is not something to be eliminated but transformed. When you engage with your resistance with honesty and compassion, it begins to shift. The fear of failure, once examined, reveals a desire for acceptance. The procrastination, when explored, may uncover a fear of inadequacy or rejection. By bringing these unconscious elements into awareness, you reduce their power over you. What was once an invisible block becomes an integrated part of your evolving self. This process of confrontation and integration is what makes the journey transformational, not the plan itself, but the internal shifts it demands of you. Without resistance, the plan would be mechanical and growth superficial. It is the friction that sharpens the will. The emotional discomfort becomes the training ground for psychological resilience. Every time you choose to continue despite the resistance, you are building a new narrative about yourself, one rooted not in fear or habit, but in conscious choice. In this way, success is not just achieving the external goal, but becoming the kind of person who can withstand and grow through inner conflict. Ultimately, the resistance you face during a 6-month transformation is not a sign of failure or weakness. It is evidence that change is actually happening. It is proof that the old self is being challenged. To confront this resistance is to take the first step toward true autonomy. It is through this very struggle that a deeper sense of self is born, not as an idea, but as lived experience. The idea that the future self is something to be found suggests passivity, as if one must go on a quest and stumble upon a preformed version of themselves hiding somewhere in the future. But the truth is far more profound and empowering. The future self is not discovered, it is created. Every action, thought, and decision you make today is a brushstroke painting the portrait of who you will become. A 6-month success plan is not simply a calendar of goals or a checklist of tasks. It is a deliberate act of shaping your future identity through present behavior. The process is not about becoming someone else, but about uncovering and assembling the fullest potential of who you are capable of being. This transformation begins when you stop waiting for clarity and instead start creating it. Many people stall their progress because they believe they need to feel ready or inspired before they can begin. But readiness is often a byproduct of movement, not a prerequisite for it. You do not wait to become your future self, you act as if you already are that person. and through that imitation you begin to embody those traits. When you commit to a vision for 6 months, you are not just planning your schedule, you are rehearsing a new identity. Each day you align your behavior with your desired future. You dissolve the gap between who you are and who you want to be. This creative process is deeply psychological. The mind is shaped by repetition and belief. If you consistently act in accordance with your higher values, your mind begins to believe that you are, in fact, that higher version of yourself. This is not delusion. It is a restructuring of identity through intentional action. When you wake early despite fatigue, focus despite distraction, persist despite discouragement, you are reinforcing the neural and emotional pathways of resilience, discipline, and commitment. Over time, these qualities become second nature, not because they are inherited, but because they are cultivated. To create your future self also requires a departure from outdated narratives. Many people carry identities that were formed in environments of fear, failure, or limitation. These identities are maintained by stories of inadequacy, of repeated mistakes, of past disappointments. A 6-month plan is an opportunity to interrupt that narrative by writing a new one through action. You do not need to argue with the past. You simply begin to act in ways that contradict it. This is one of the most powerful forms of self-creation. When the story you tell with your behavior overrides the story you've carried in your mind. What makes this transformation lasting is consistency. One moment of change is not enough to redefine a self-concept, but 6 months of consistent alignment between action and aspiration creates a momentum that becomes difficult to reverse. You begin to identify less with the version of you who hesitated, feared, or failed, and more with the one who plans, acts, and evolves. This is how the future self takes form, not through wishful thinking, but through living as though the transformation is already in motion. And in truth it is. There is something deeply liberating in realizing that you do not have to wait for some magical moment to become your ideal self. The invitation is always present in the now. Your future self is waiting not to be found but to be constructed. Through effort, vision, and presence, each moment is a creative act, and over 6 months these moments accumulate. They become a body of evidence. They become your new reality. The future is not out there. It is what you choose to build today. Meaning is the silent force that sustains every long journey. Without it, even the most organized success plan feels hollow, and every task becomes a weight. With it, the same plan becomes a personal mission, a form of psychological commitment that transcends mere productivity. A 6-month success plan is not simply about setting goals. It is about anchoring those goals in something deeply personal, something that resonates with the core of your being. When meaning is present, discipline no longer feels like punishment, and effort no longer feels like sacrifice. Instead, each action takes on the quality of intention. You are not just working toward an outcome, you are living out a purpose. Many people fail to sustain momentum not because they lack discipline, but because they lack meaning. They set goals that are socially accepted, externally validated, or borrowed from others. But when a goal is disconnected from personal truth, it becomes unsustainable. The psyche resists what it does not believe in. When you initiate a 6-month plan, you must first ask yourself, why does this matter to me? The answer may not always be clear at first, but asking the question opens a dialogue between your conscious mind and your deeper values. This inner clarity becomes the fuel that carries you through periods of struggle, fatigue, or doubt. As you move through the plan, meaning begins to crystallize through action. What starts as a vague desire becomes real when it is experienced through discipline. For instance, committing to daily writing may begin as a means to improve skill, but over time it reveals itself as a way of expressing truth, healing wounds, or exploring the subconscious. The task becomes a portal to something greater than itself. And this is how meaning evolves. It often hides behind the commitment, only revealing itself to those willing to stay the course. Moreover, meaning provides emotional resilience. In a 6-month journey, setbacks are inevitable. There will be days when progress feels invisible, when motivation dries up, and when external validation is absent. During such times, it is not inspiration that saves you, it is meaning. If you know why you started, you can survive the uncertainty of not knowing when or how you'll finish. Meaning gives you the strength to endure delay, to continue in silence, to persevere without applause. It becomes the emotional anchor that keeps you from drifting when the storms of self-doubt arise. There is also a spiritual dimension to meaning. When your actions align with your values, you feel a sense of inner harmony, a kind of psychological integrity. This alignment doesn't require perfection, only sincerity. It is felt when your external life begins to reflect your internal truth. In such moments, even the smallest tasks carry weight. Waking up early, practicing your craft, or resisting distraction becomes not just an act of self-control, but a statement of who you are becoming. You are no longer merely pursuing success, you are embodying it. When meaning is absent, time feels slow and effort feels wasted. But when meaning is present, time becomes a sacred medium of transformation. The days do not pass meaninglessly, they accumulate with significance. Each one becomes a step, not just toward a goal, but toward a fuller version of yourself. In this way, a 6-month plan is not just about reaching a destination. It is about walking a path with depth, awareness, and purpose. Success, then, is not only measured by what you achieve, but by what the journey awakens within you. Time is often misunderstood as a linear measurement, a fixed sequence of minutes, hours, and days through which we pass. But psychologically, time is not experienced as a simple progression. It is deeply reflective. It acts as a mirror, revealing not just the passage of days, but the quality of your engagement with those days. A 6-month success plan, when approached consciously, becomes more than a schedule. It becomes a reflective instrument that shows you who you are becoming through your patterns, choices, and persistence. Time in this context doesn't just move forward, it reflects back everything you project into it. Your discipline, your intentions, your struggles, your growth. Most people think of 6 months as either too short to achieve anything significant or too long to remain committed. But 6 months is powerful because it provides enough time for the psyche to adjust, to integrate, and to evolve. When you engage with time intentionally over this span, it becomes a psychological container, a space where identity can shift. The first weeks may feel mechanical, driven by motivation or novelty, but as time progresses and effort compounds, something deeper begins to surface. Time starts to echo your inner world. If you approach your plan with inconsistency, procrastination, or avoidance, time mirrors that back to you. You see the consequences, you feel the dissonance, but if you act with focus, consistency, and intention, time begins to confirm your transformation. This is where the metaphor of time as a mirror becomes essential. It does not lie, it reflects whatever you give to it. You cannot negotiate with it, manipulate it, or deceive it. If you waste it, it shows you what that waste looks like in the form of stagnation, regret, or diminished confidence. If you use it with care, it reflects back growth, clarity, and momentum. The plan you create is not just a list of tasks. It is a dialogue with time, and time answers not with words, but with evidence. 6 months becomes a test of honesty. Are you really becoming who you say you want to be? Additionally, the mirror of time reveals patterns that you may have otherwise ignored. You begin to see your tendencies, your limits, and your strength. Perhaps you always falter at the 3rd week. Perhaps your energy is strongest in the morning. Perhaps you sabotage progress when success becomes visible. These insights are not trivial, they are revelations. And only through the reflective nature of time can such self-knowledge arise. You do not just measure your progress through tasks completed, but through your growing understanding of your inner world. Time, when used consciously, becomes a collaborator in your transformation. Each day is an opportunity to express your evolving self. Each week marks a turning point. Each month reveals a new layer of character. You begin to experience time not as something you pass through, but as something you shape with your intention. And as time reflects you more clearly, you learn to adjust, to refine, to deepen your commitment. This is the essence of personal evolution, not random change, but conscious, sustained engagement with life's unfolding moments. In the end, 6 months is not just a time frame, it is a psychological mirror. If you walk through it blindly, it reflects confusion. If you walk through it with clarity, it reflects growth. Your habits, your focus, your inner conversations, all of it is projected onto the mirror of time. And what it gives you in return is the truth of your becoming. You do not merely survive 6 months, you emerge from it transformed. If you've been honest, deliberate, and willing to look into the mirror with open eyes. Transformation is not simply about doing different things. It is about becoming someone new through consistent engagement with conscious action. A 6-month journey of intentional growth has the power to alter the very structure of your inner world, not because of the external results it may bring, but because of the internal shift it demands. When you walk such a path with awareness, time itself becomes a sculptor, slowly carving away at the layers of illusion, distraction, and self-doubt to reveal something more authentic. The 6 months become more than a timeline. They become a psychological crucible where you are shaped by your own effort, commitment, and willingness to confront what you once avoided. This process is deeply personal. No one can walk it for you. The transformation does not occur in loud moments of success or grand declarations. It happens in the quiet repetition of choices that no one sees, the early mornings, the moments you resist temptation, the decisions to act when it would be easier to retreat. These are the moments that matter, because they are the raw materials from which the new self is built. Over time, these moments collect, layering upon one another until they form a new foundation. A new way of being that feels less like change and more like coming home to a part of yourself that had long been waiting. The challenge of such a path is that the transformation is often invisible while it's happening. You may feel as though nothing is changing, that your efforts are in vain, but what is truly occurring is a shift at the level of identity. The external world may not reflect your inner changes immediately, but internally the restructuring is taking place. Your thoughts become more aligned, your emotions more stable, your decisions more grounded. You begin to carry yourself differently, not with arrogance, but with quiet certainty. The change is not loud, but it is unmistakable. What makes this period of 6 months uniquely powerful is that it's long enough to push you beyond the initial wave of motivation, but not so long that the vision becomes abstract. It invites consistency over intensity. It demands depth rather than speed, and through this process, something extraordinary happens. You become someone you can trust. Your mind no longer sees your goals as distant dreams, but as reflections of who you are capable of being. You've walked the path long enough to know that your word to yourself holds weight. This self-trust is one of the deepest rewards of transformation. Additionally, this journey doesn't just build habits or skills, it deepens self-awareness. You begin to observe how you respond to pressure, to failure, to small wins. You notice what motivates you and what derails you. This is not merely functional knowledge, it is foundational. It gives you the ability to navigate life with greater clarity and resilience long after the 6 months are over. Because once you've walked consciously through time, once you've watched yourself evolve day by day, you no longer see yourself as static or limited. You realize that you are in constant motion, and that motion is yours to direct. Ultimately, the true transformation of a 6-month success plan is not that you arrive at a particular goal, but that you no longer identify with the version of yourself who was waiting, hoping, or doubting. You become someone who acts, who builds, who grows. You carry forward the lessons, the discipline, and the awareness long after the plan ends. 6 months may be marked on the calendar, but its imprint on your soul is timeless. You didn't just pass through time. You allowed time to pass through you, and you emerged different, deeper, and undeniably more whole.